Hashem Naseh v'Natzliach, Shiur Torah. Thank you again for having me. This shiur, before I forget, I always forget these, the shiur will go to Ilui Nishmat Gavriel ben Kamuna, and also Zora bat Kachla. May their soul rest in heaven, and protect us also, and their zchuyot help us, and also a refuah shlema to Lourdes Garcia, Arturo Cotto, Michael Ben Sarah, Edilama Guerrero, did I say right? Guerrero? Migdalia Claro, Josefa Mato, Paulino Claro Suarez, and Sarah Batzara.
Edilma Guerrero.
May Hashem give them, and
Edilma.
and Edilma. May Hashem give them refuah shlema, give all of Am Yisrael refuah shlema very fast, so we can spend all of the extra energy we possibly can get doing His will, doing His mitzvot. That's one of the things that someone needs to understand, is that if you want Hashem to give you refuah shlema, to give you parnasah, to give you good, you have to give Him a reason. Because what happens with mankind in general, it's not just Jews, in mankind in general, is that we constantly ask Hashem for stuff. Give me money, give me a zivug, give me kids, give me a new job, give me this, give me. And then Hashem says, okay, you know what? You're my son, I love you, you're my creation, I love you, I'll give it to you. But what happens after He gives it to you? You forget about Him. Or even worse, you use it against Him. So there's some people, unfortunately some Jews, that Hashem gave them a brain power and the ability to understand things, to use a computer, to do good things, but instead they use all of this knowledge that they have to go against the Torah. So they make whole websites against rabbis, they make whole websites against the Torah itself. There's even people in Israel, which is mind-boggling to me. If it's in the exile, if it's around the world, it's easy to understand, because if you're far away from the land, maybe it's easier to be infected by the tumah of the world. But when you're inside Israel, it's unbelievable for me to find out stories where there's people that are supposed to be smart people, but they spend their entire energy, resources, in every way, shape, or form, just trying to make people get off of the Torah, leave the Torah. So instead of making people become religious, they try to make people not religious. And the worst part about it is that there's actually people that donate for these causes. So before we started, we were talking about what's happening in the world. The situation is very, very clear that the world is heating up. The war is continuing to be fought quietly, but here and there you hear about these disasters that are happening in the world. From time to time you hear about them. Whether it's terrorism in Israel that apparently the rest of the world doesn't care about. They only care about the Arab terrorists being killed. They care about that. The Jews being killed, they don't care. Or you hear about bombings that are happening around the world. Or you're hearing about the constant conflicts between the governments and the threats. So it's very, very obvious that the world is heating up, and we are only 30 seconds away from having a war. And only 30 seconds away from some fool pressing a button and fulfilling the last prophecy that we have, which is right before the Mashiach. There will be a war called Gog Magog. So in this week's parasha, we learn something very, very critical. There are many lessons in this week's parasha, like any parasha. But we learned something very, very critical. I discussed a little bit yesterday, but we'll go over it again in more detail, Bezrat Hashem, which is one of the things that's going to help you survive times like this. Not that there's going to be more times like this, but times like this. And it's interesting that right now in this week's parasha, we're talking about the exile from Egypt. The exile from the worst place on earth, and supposed to go to the best place. But the exile itself wasn't easy. It wasn't a wonderful experience like we're reading about from a distance of 3,300 years. reading about, oh, Am Yisrael left Egypt, what a great thing. In reality, we learned during the first few verses that just the first word, it says Vayihi, and it happened. I talked about this in more detail yesterday, is that any time a verse starts with the word Vayihi, it happened, it's an indication of something bad. It's an indication of something bad is ahead, or something bad is happening. This is just the first verse of the Parashat Beshalach. In the next couple of verses, it says, "Vayesev Elohim et ha'am derech hamidbar yam suf v'chamushim alu bnei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim." It's in verse 18. So God turned the people toward the way of the wilderness to the sea. The children of Israel were armed when they went up from Egypt. Now, the literal translation of chamushim is armed. They had weapons. But another translation for that word is that is 1/5, 20%. And Chazal is telling us here is that in reality what that sentence is telling you, one of the reasons why the first word of this parasha is indicating something bad is because Am Yisrael was not happy right now to leave Egypt. Why? Because just a few weeks ago, 80% of Am Yisrael was killed by HaShem. Only 20% left Egypt. Why did the 80% get killed? Because they didn't want to do tshuva. They didn't want to leave the material world. They didn't want to learn Torah. They didn't want to do mitzvot. They didn't want to do it. So I said, okay, if you don't want to do it, you have no purpose in the world. At least the goyim, they have a purpose. Some of them have a purpose to help the Jews. Some of them have a purpose of going against the Jews. So I'm not going to kill them. Whether they're from Greece, or they're from Rome, or they're from America, or they're from all over the world. I don't have to kill them because they're not doing Torah. They're not obligated by the same level of Torah as you are. But you are a Jew. You are obligated to follow it. You have no choice. It's not free choice like people think. It's choice. You do it, you get a reward. You don't do it, you get punishment. It's not like people think that free choice is that it's something like, well, you can do whatever you want, and Hashem is just going to deal with the consequences. He's just going to forgive you. If you do what he says, he loves you extra. If you don't do what he says, okay, don't worry about it. That's what people's mentality is, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Choice that Hashem really gives us is that if you do what he says, you get reward. You don't do it, you get punishment. So it's just like, for example, if somebody says, come to work and I'll give you $100. But if you don't come to work, I'm going to send my hitman, they're going to beat you up all day. That's the choice that we really have. It's reward or punishment. There's no nothing. There's no if you don't come to work, you get nothing. You could just take the day off. So Am Yisrael here is very, very upset because only 20% survived. As a matter of fact, some of the sages say that only 1 out of 500 actually left Egypt, meaning 0.5%. Not even 0.1%. 1% of 1,000 is 10, so I guess 2 out of 1,000 actually left Egypt. One midrash I actually read. Where is it? Here it is. Some of this in Me'am Loez. This is really mind-boggling. I never knew this, even though I read it and I took notes on it. I just never noticed it or remembered it. Is that it's actually one sage? There's a couple of sages in Mechilta and different midrashim that say it wasn't 1 out of 5. 1 out of 5. It wasn't 1 out of 500. It was 1 out of 500,000 survived. So you're talking about 1 out of 500,000.
Just too little.
That pretty much means that Hashem nearly annihilated the entire nation. Why? They didn't want to do tshuva. So the estimate that they have here is that if the number of Jews that left Egypt was 3 million, which is the lowest estimate there is, the number is probably much higher, the original number that was in Egypt was somewhere around 300 million Jews. Obviously, this is a much larger number than the Jews that are available today. Some numbers are even higher than that. But nonetheless, when the Jews left Egypt, we found out something very, very important about God. He's not kidding. He's not kidding. He's not like mankind where he says do something, you don't do it. He says, okay, you know what, no big deal. We talked about the last time I was here, when he constantly mentions in the last few parashot and in this parasha again, Ani HaShem. I am God. When he says I am God, he means I am God, that I keep my word. I don't change my mind. I'm not like mankind where I say one thing one day and I change my mind the next day. I don't break my promises. I don't forget. If I say there's a reward and punishment, there's a reward and punishment. If you don't want to do what I brought you to this world to do, I don't need you. So when people say, listen, but it says in the Torah, God is merciful. How is he merciful if he killed, according to this sage, 499,999 Jews out of every 500,000 and only let one survive? How is that mercy? Now, on one end, you can see, no, wait a minute, Chas v'shalom, maybe that's not mercy. But in reality, it is mercy. The fact that so many were bad, and he still didn't just give up on the whole nation like he did with the times of Noah. He technically had 499,999 reasons to destroy the whole world. Forget just the nation of Israel. And he only had one, maybe a reason to keep it. And even the ones that survived, it wasn't like they were tzaddikim. They were still at the 49th level of tumah, 49th level of impurity. They were just one level away, one sin away, from getting to level 50, which means they're part of the 500,000. He has to destroy them. They're one sin away. So even the ones that are left are not exactly in good shape. So technically, he had all the reasons, Chas v'shalom, to destroy everything. So the mercy in that time, you see, is that he didn't destroy it. Where's the mercy in our time? It's even more today than it was back then. Because number one, Jews are not exactly all doing everything he says around the world. Many of us are not. But he doesn't punish us the same way. He gives us time. We violate Shabbat, no one's dying. You don't see people all of a sudden, the guy drives, turns on the car on Shabbat, Chas v'shalom, the car blows up. You don't see that. Someone smokes a cigarette on Shabbat, all of a sudden his head blows up. You don't see that either. Mm-hmm. He's not punishing you, or someone eats a pork on Yom Kippur with some cheese on it. You don't see him choking to death. You don't see him choking to death. Someone even says things against HaShem. Lightning doesn't strike him. He gives him more time. More time to eventually wake up, because this is the last chance. There's no second chance. This was the first chance here in Egypt. That's why the punishment came right away. Here he's giving us more time. He even has more mercy on us now, because this is the last chance. The Mashiach is around the corner. Now, one of the things that got HaShem to have mercy on the 4 out of 5 or the 499,999 out of 500, where he let the one live, is the fact that they had enough emuna. They didn't have a lot of emuna, which we'll learn from this parasha, but they had enough emuna to go into the desert without knowing where they're going. They're leaving a civilized country, if you will, even though there were Rashaim and Merushaim in Egypt. But in essence, they're leaving a place where there's food, there's commerce. They're not slaves already for several months, because pretty much the kingdom was destroyed. They can go back to maybe normal lives, possibly. But they're trusting Hashem to go into the desert, which even if it's one person, it's most likely the person's not going to survive in a desert, let alone millions of people with no food. Where are you going to find water? Where are you going to find food? So this was enough emunah to get them out. And this is one of the things that's going to get us out. Emunah is one of the most important things that you need to work on every single day in order for you to survive the end of times. Right now, Baruch Hashem, we're in a good situation. No one's attacking us. We're able to practice our religion, even publicize it on the internet, say what we want. We live in a wonderful country that at this point gives us freedom. The fact that some of the leadership in the country are not exactly pro-Jews is a different story, but nonetheless, Hashem is allowing us to practice our religion freely. Not like the people in the Holocaust, Hashem and Hashem, what happened there, or the people during the times of Egypt, where you weren't allowed to do anything. Everybody was an idol worship. Or the times of Rome or Greece, where their purpose was to destroy Judaism, especially the Greeks. So right now Hashem is making it easy for us to practice Judaism. He's making it easy for us to connect to Him. If we connect to Him, we have a chance of surviving. But if we waste our time, and we focus all of our attention on sports and money and women and men and all the material in this world, then we're giving up on the biggest opportunity of a lifetime without realizing that it's our last opportunity. Now, how do we get to a point of building this emunah? Chazal says that there's only two things that are going to help someone at the end of times. Torah ve'gmilut chasadim. The Torah, meaning not only learning Torah every day, but practicing Torah. You can't just say, listen, you know what? Thank you for giving me this advice. I'm going to read 15 minutes or an hour a day of Torah, but I'm not going to keep anything. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to read it like a book. I'm going to read it like Harry Potter. I'm going to read it like one of these novels that is a bestseller in the New York Times. I want to read it. Isn't that Torah? No. It's not. Torah, when Chazal says Torah, it means not only learning Torah, but actually putting it into action. Right. Doing what it says. Because if you're just reading it like a book, that by itself is a sin. It's not just a book. It's not just a history book. The second thing is Gemilut Chasadim. Gemilut Chasadim is doing something, as we were saying before, beyond just money. Yes, it may include money. It may not include money. But most importantly, it's something that includes your time, where you are donating your time. You're donating your effort. You're doing something that's above and beyond what you would normally do. One of the best Gemilut Chasadim that you can possibly do, especially now, is, as we were saying right before we pressed the button on, is kiruv. Getting other Jews to become religious. Now, if you're a good speaker, you can give, if you know Torah, you're a good speaker, you could teach Torah. If not, you give them a disc of somebody else that speaks. If you don't have a disc, bring them to a lecture. There's all types of ways of doing kiruv. It doesn't all require money. If you already have a Facebook account or a Twitter account, instead of twittering about what Paris Hilton ate last week on Tuesday at 3 a.m., tweet a Shiur Torah by Rabbi Mizrahi or Rabbi Zamir Cohen or one of these rabbis. Stop wasting your time with nonsense. If you're on Facebook, if you see a nice shiur, or you see one of these short clips that we've been putting on over the last week, or anything else that's out there, press like, share it with your friends. Don't be so selfish. Spread the words of Torah. Some of it requires money, but it doesn't necessarily need to. Why is kiruv so good? Because the Gemara in Masechet Baba Metzia, it says someone that brings other Jews that are far and makes them religious, is given the power to override Hashem's decrees. This is mind-boggling when you think about it. Someone that makes other Jews religious, Hashem is giving him the power to tell Hashem, no, I disagree, I want this person to live. Hashem decides, listen, I need to punish this person, chas v'shalom, I'm going to give him a disease. And he's only going to have a week to live. If that person is lucky enough to know a righteous Jew that does kiruv, and that person comes and cares enough about this Jew, and he starts praying to Hashem, and he says, Hashem, no, I don't want you to kill him. He's going to do better. Give him another chance. According to Chazal in the Gemara, this is the oral Torah. This is not some hidden book that no one knows about. This is in the core part of the foundation of the Torah. Hashem, in essence, can say, yes, something that was already decided, even if it's a death penalty. Now, obviously, if we could do something like that for others, we could do stuff like that for ourselves. Why does Hashem care so much about people that do kiruv? Why does Hashem consider them something that's beyond just righteous? Where there was a shiur by Rabbi Yosef, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, and he was talking about this tractate in Bava Metzia, but also describing a kiruv person or kiruv rabbi's afterlife. He says the highest level that a righteous person can reach is where the Malachei Hasharet, the angels of God, the righteous person reaches that level of heaven. He's going to be with them. He's going to be directly with the servants of God. There's only one level above them. That's literally above the angels of God. And there's only one kind of person that goes there. Someone that does kiruv. So even if someone is the Gdol Ador, someone knows Torah, like it's flowing out of his mouth, it's something amazing. He knows everything by heart. The whole Gemara, the whole Zohar, the whole Mishnah, the whole Chumash, Tanakh, hundreds of thousands of books. His whole life he's been in a room, closed, just with Torah. Never made a sin in his life. But he didn't do kiruv. Okay, so he gets to a high level in heaven, B'ezrat Hashem. Some little guy doesn't know even a quarter of what this tzaddik knows, but he brings Jews back. He brings Jews back to Hashem, gets to a high level. Why? Because if you think about it, at the end of Masechet Sotah, when it talks about the end of times, Hashem is giving us a very, very critical message. He's telling us that after all of these prophecies come true, which we talked about, whether it's promiscuity, inflation, war, all bad stuff, I'm going to put Am Yisrael in a situation where you will have nothing to rely on other than Avinu Shebashamayim, our Father in heaven. So whether you have money, your money is going to be worthless. You thought you had power, you're now going to be a peasant. You thought that your looks are going to get you somewhere, your looks are going to be worthless. Everything you thought was meaningful, I'm going to put you in a position where it's completely worthless, and there's only one thing that you can rely on. Me, God. That's it. Avinu Shebashamayim. Avinu Shebashamayim means our Father in heaven. So when he's saying that the only thing he's going to, the ultimate purpose, in essence, of the ultimate climax of this world, is for us to get to a point where we can only rely on our Father in heaven. So what is it telling us here? It's telling us here that no matter what we do, we're still his children. So if one of my children is not only righteous with me, but he's so worried about my other children, his brothers and sisters, to bring them back to me, him I love extra. Her I love extra. Because not only is she doing the right thing already, okay, she's keeping mitzvot, she's keeping Shabbat, she's keeping kosher, she's doing all the things, she's doing whatever she can. Whatever she's supposed to, she's doing it, fine. But she's doing chesed with HaShem. You could even say, you're almost, in essence, you're doing the favor, not just obviously you're the ones that benefit, HaShem is perfect, but in essence, almost like you're doing the favor for HaShem. You're doing the chesed for HaShem because he has a lost child somewhere. Completely lost, has no concept of what God is. Has no concept of what's happening in the world around him. And you're getting this boy or girl to open a Torah every day for a little bit of time, to learn some Torah, to do mitzvot, to do something, to connect him with God. Doesn't get better than that. It doesn't get better than that. So, someone that really wants to connect to Hashem on a bigger level should spend as much energy as they can doing it. Again, like I said, not everybody's a speaker, not everybody is a scholar, but there's ways to do it for very, very cheap and very, very simple. Whether it's pressing like, or sharing videos, or bringing people to Shiur Torah, getting people to a point where it's not you're just pressing like all day like a robot. Obviously have some purpose. Send it to people, do something beyond just being a robot. Hashem wanted robots, you just create the angels. He doesn't need humans. So, obviously, go out of your way to do chesed with Hashem. When you go out of your way to do chesed with Hashem, He will go out of His way to do chesed with you. In this world and the next. Now, Am Yisrael in this situation had a difficult time seeing the chesed that Hashem was giving them. Why? Because they're in the rut. They were in the difficulty right now. A bunch of their friends and family died. They're going into a desert. It's not exactly known to be a pleasant vacation spot. And on top of that, they just find out that Pharaoh is coming after them. Now it says here, ופרעה הקריב ויישאו בני ישראל את עיניהם והנה מצרים נוסע אחריהם. Pharaoh approached the children of Israel, raised their eyes, and behold, Egypt was journeying after them. And they were very frightened. Now, ikriv means approached, literally in English, but ikriv also means brought closer. The literal translation would mean it brought closer. It's in verse 10, 14:10. Ikriv is a kiruv. Kiruv means you brought closer, you brought people back to Hashem. So in essence, what Chazal is telling us here is that Paro, by chasing and scaring Am Yisrael, did kiruv. Why? Before they knew that Paro was chasing them, they were unhappy. They didn't have 100% emuna. They didn't see the chesed that Hashem is giving them. They were complaining a lot. When do people do tshuva? When problems start. You go to a hospital near the emergency room, intensive care unit, hospice, where people are dying, cancer center. Everyone is religious all of a sudden. Even the ones that were anti-Torah, they see a rabbi, come give me a blessing. Everyone, why? Because they know that it's possible for them to go meet their maker. They become religious in the last second. Problems start, people become religious. People lose money, they look at Hashem. People lose health, they look at Hashem. They gain health, they look in their pocket, they look at themselves, they look in the mirror. Do you ever see somebody that goes to the gym and instead of looking in the mirror, they look at God and thank Him? Usually they look in the mirror. Why? Because they look at their own muscles. That's what people do in the gym. They look at their own muscles. Why do you think a gym? I remember when I was a kid, I used to go to the gym. That's all you do. You look in the mirror the whole time. Oh, my muscle is bigger today, small. That's what you do.
So that's the reason why the gyms are full of
Of course, you want to look at yourself. That's all you do. You look at yourself. Every gym in the whole world, they're all full of mirrors. Why? Because people need to look at themselves. Oh, today my muscle is bigger. Today it's smaller. Today this. That's people are full of themselves. Someone that's built like an ox, he doesn't look at Hashem and says, "Thank you, Hashem, for giving me the strength." He looks at him. He looks at himself. Look what I did. Someone that just won the lotto or makes a lot of money in his job, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, when you ask him, so what made you rich? The first thing that he says is, I did. I worked really hard. I was very smart. I did this. No, nothing. Hashem gave it to you. That's it. That's really the answer. But nobody does it though. Very, very few people do it. So in this situation when Hashem wants to bring us closer, the most common and effective weapon to make this, or tool to make this work, is bring disaster. And that's when he brought Paro. Paro came, and that's why he says Paro brought back the children of Israel. He made them look up. And that's why at the end of the verse it says, children of Israel cried out to Hashem. After they were frightened, the children of Israel cried out to Hashem. It didn't say they were crying to Hashem before this. Technically, every day you pray, you're supposed to cry to Hashem, sins you've done in the past, sins you're doing today, the fact that you're not connected to Him as deep as you should be. You make mistakes all day. You're supposed to cry a little bit to Him every day, technically. They didn't cry. It doesn't say that they cried the day before, or even when they left Egypt. They didn't cry anything. Why didn't they start crying? Paro came. And that's why Chazal says that Paro made better kiruv than 1,000 fasts. When you do fasts, for example, it's like you do a sacrifice. It's a self-sacrifice. It's supposed to make you more spiritual because there's less material in you. That's one of the reasons why we fast. So he says the kiruv that Paro did was better than 1,000 fasts. Same thing with Haman. Haman al-Rashai Machshimo, that tried to destroy the nation of Israel. During the holiday of Purim, we're going to learn about the Megillah and things like that. It's an amazing, miraculous story. But Haman got the schut of having his descendants all do tshuva and becoming sages, when he himself tried to destroy and wipe out the entire nation of Israel. He was his days Hitler. He was worse than Hitler. But his descendants did tshuva, converted, and became sages, became chachamim. Why? Because it says even his wickedness was used effectively. What? It made the entire nation of Israel do tshuva. When they found out that in the next few days, next week, there's a decree being passed that every Jew needs to be killed, everyone fasted. Everyone did tshuva. That's why Hashem sent it. So when people ask a difficult question of why did Hashem bring the Holocaust, or where was Hashem, Chas v'shalom, where was Hashem during the Holocaust? First of all, we need to know that Egypt was much, much worse than the Holocaust. Much, much worse than the Holocaust. More people died, more people suffered. This does not discount what happened at the Holocaust. But people need to know that, number one, the Holocaust was not the first or last thing that happened to the nation of Israel. Many things have happened. And all of it was by the same God. And all of it was for the good. As difficult as that is to hear and even say, everything Hashem does is for our own good. And I know that people don't like to talk about it, and I know that people get offended, but again, this is clear in the Torah. Rabbi Akiva says, everything that the merciful one does is always for the best. This is an attractive Bachot in the Gemara. What does it mean, everything is for the best? Is that Hashem has an unlimited amount of options of what to do. He's not limited. So let's say, for example, that we want to go from here to New York. There are many ways of getting there. We can go there by plane, we can go there with a car, we can go there with a train, we can go there with a boat, with a chopper. Mm-hmm. But even when we use those few options, there's different directions of taking. We can go around the entire continent of North America to eventually arrive at New York, or we can go a straight shot on I-95. So there are many, many, many different options of how to do each thing. What Rabbi Akiva is teaching us here is that every choice that Hashem makes is the best possible option. It's the option with the best possible outcome. Out of all the possible choices, there cannot be a better option, even if it's something that's perceived and recognized as terrible by us. It is the best possible thing that could have happened. It's easy for people to talk about Egypt, despite tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of Jews dying, than it is to talk about something as recent as the Holocaust. So let's talk about Egypt. How could hundreds of millions of Jews dying be good? When Hashem told Abraham that he's going to bring his descendants to Egypt, and they're going to be under servitude for 400 years, he also made a second promise, which was that eventually we're going to get the Torah. He's going to give them the nation of it. He's going to give them the Israel, the land of Israel. And in essence, there's an ultimate purpose for all of it. So we know that in order for us to get from point A to point B, we have to go through the middle. Why? Hashem created the nation of Israel as an Am Kshe Orif, Am with a stiff neck people, stubborn people. Now, a young person that's 18, 20, 25 years old is usually stubborn most of the time, especially if they don't have Torah in their life. They usually think they're smarter than everybody else. Abba and Saba don't know anything. Ima for sure doesn't know anything. The fact that they're 20 years older than me doesn't mean anything. I'm young, I'm smarter, I'm more innovative. I don't need to learn from their mistakes because I'm not going to make their mistakes. All of us were on that boat, and all of us are in that boat right now. Either we know a kid that's doing it, or we were the kid that did it. That's just a reality. Every young person thinks that they are better than the previous generation. Especially if that young person doesn't have Torah. Torah changes that. But nonetheless, the nation of Israel was very, very young, and very, very stubborn, and unbearable. Now, in order for someone to receive the holiness of Torah and understand it and connect to it and get to a point where they could actually become one with it, stubbornness to that extent and arrogance to that extent makes it impossible. Hashem specifically says, an arrogant person and I cannot be in the same room. He disgusts me. To'avat Hashem. Someone that's arrogant disgusts Hashem. So when someone comes from a nation that's known by God, God is giving us the description. Am Kshe Orif. Am stiff-necked people. part of the reason of sending us through this disaster, or what's perceived as a disaster of Egypt, is to soften us. Because as you see that 18-year-old kid, he's very stubborn, and at 25 he's even worse. Because now maybe he has a few dollars to his name. Or maybe Saba or Safta gave him a few dollars, so now he thinks he's very, very strong. He's even smarter. At 30, still. And he starts maybe having some kids. 35 softens a little bit. At 40, a little bit more. By the time he reaches the age of 70, it's as if it's two different people. The boy and the old man would not be able, if they were at the same time, they would not be able to be in the same room. Because the old man has already been beat up for 70 years. He knows that all the boy that he used to think is all nonsense. He's not smarter than everybody. He's not smarter than anybody. The experience of the people before us was very, very valuable. Okay, just leave it there. The experience of the people before us was extremely valuable and unfortunately ignored. And the old man now realizes how he wishes he used to do things differently. He has more patience now. He's a better version of what he used to be. But in order to get there, he had to go through hardship. A person usually that's very good at giving advice, or a person that's usually very good at going through difficult times, has to have experience. That's why usually if you have people like to have coaches. People like to have, like personal coaches. Obviously different people have different skill sets. But if you're looking for a psychiatrist or a coach or someone that you could really connect to, my personal recommendation is try to find someone really old. Because that could assure you that that person has a lot of experience. He went through life. Or someone that went through hell. Someone that went through a lot of problems. I can tell you personally, as you guys I'm sure by now maybe saw Shiur number 45 or some of the other Shiurs that I talk about in my personal life, I went through my own version of hell in this world. I thank God every single day for it, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to speak to you guys and have any context other than just reading some verses to you, without really knowing the meaning behind it. Experience means you went through problems. The reason why a 20-year-old employee is worth a fraction of what someone that's been at the company for 20 or 30 years and is 40 or 50 years old is not because the 50-year-old is smarter. Could very well be that the 20-year-old is much smarter than the 50-year-old. His IQ is 200, the 50-year-old is normal. But why is the 50-year-old getting $500,000 a year and the little 20-year-old maybe getting $30,000? Because the 50-year-old has 20 years worth of problems as a history. He knows how to deal with problems. He knows how to deal with all of these issues. And that's what got him to that point. HaShem needed us to go through problems. Needed us to go through suffering. Because the way He created us as kings. The first man, Adam, was a king. He was the only creation. He's the prime of creation. He named all of the animals, all of the trees, everything. He had wisdom that's beyond our understanding. He had beauty that's beyond our understanding, so much so that we won't even, if you compare a human to a monkey today, it wouldn't be a fair comparison of us to him.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a fair. Look, us, obviously a human being to us looks better than a monkey, right? But if you compare a human being to Adam, it's actually worse than a human to a monkey right now. Brilliant, beauty, connection, direct connection with God. You're the only human being on earth. Momentarily until Chava comes. I mean, even when Chava comes and the sons come, fine. Okay, there's 4 people. There's 6 people. There's 10 people. Fine. It's still, you're the number one. You're the first person. You're called Adam HaRishon. You're the first man. You're always going to be forever known as the first person on earth. So He created us as kings. The soul of Adam HaRishon was split up into all the souls in the world today. All of us still have that bit of kinghood that we had at the time. Some of us act like we're still kings even though we're barely servants. And that's one of the things that HaShem needed us to understand, is that in order for us to receive the Torah and fulfill it, we had to go through problems. So when Paro took hold of the Jewish nation and turned them all into slaves, the stubbornness of the nation of Israel slowly but surely became weaker and weaker and weaker. And even though you look at, for example, different parts of Jews around the world, whether they're Israelis or Spanish or American Jews or Yemenite Jews and so on, each one has their own traits and their own flaws or their own positives. But in general, we're not necessarily known amongst the world as the most humble of people. Some of us are, if there's, but for the most part, Jews are not necessarily known as the people that are low-key and quiet. We're usually loud. We usually want to get attention, especially Israelis, from my knowledge. If an Israeli comes into your store, you know about it. If you have an Israeli customer, you make sure you remember him. That's just that's the way we are. So this is after we went through 3,000 more years of problems. So imagine how we were before Egypt.
Wow. I can imagine.
Amen.
So now, Paro comes because he's being used as a tool to, number one, get Am Yisrael to look at Shemaim, look at HaShem, and remember that everything is in his control. So Moses tells the nation of Israel, you have nothing to worry about. Do not fear, stand fast and see the salvation of HaShem that He will perform for you today. For as you have seen Egypt today, you shall not see them ever again. At this time there were three types of Jews. Those that wanted to go back to Egypt and become slaves again. Those that were willing to fight. And those that wanted to kill themselves. There wasn't exactly a bunch of hopeful Jews. Not many were very hopeful. Many gave up. But, rightly so, in a sense, where if you're just looking at the limited world of material, without God, unfortunately, it's very easy to give up. In front of you, you have an ocean. Around you is a desert, and there's somewhere, according to Chazal and Me'am Loez and a few other places, it says 9 million Egyptians are on their way to attack you. It's not 600, the parasha, it says the 600. He came with 600 special caravans. Pharaoh brought 600 caravans of his, and the rest of his army. So it doesn't actually say the exact number. According to Chazal, it was 9 million soldiers at least. It's a nation. A nation came to attack a nation. It's not 600 people, maybe they throw some spears at you, beat you up, put you in handcuffs. It's like, if you've ever seen the plague that we had of locusts, it covered the entire sky. You couldn't see the sky. It was darkness, complete darkness. So imagine that, just human beings. Very, very scary. So if you look at the material world, it's very easy to give up. If you look at the material world today, it's very easy to give up too. Everything is betting against you. People hate you because you're Jewish. They're going to continue hating you. They've always hated you. In general, unless you stay secluded next to your people, you have no chance. Without HaShem, you have no chance. The fact that the nation of Israel still exists is by itself the best proof of God ever.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the world itself, you have 7.5 billion, maybe even almost 8 billion people in the world. The nation of Israel is a statistical anomaly. We are 14, 15, let's say 20 million Jews in the world. But yet you hear about Jews and Judaism every single day, for good or bad, in the news, in all types of media, in Nobel Prize winners, science, medicine, finance. Every major field has to have some type of Jew involved, for good or bad. But we're not even a rounding error based on the larger number. That by itself should get us to look at HaShem. Okay, you know what? Not only am I part of this tiny nation that should never be mentioned. I mean, there's plenty of nations that are much bigger than the Jews, but no one even knows who they are. When was the last time we talked about Kazakhstan? When was the last time we talked about Georgia? When was the last time we talked about many of these countries in that area of the world? Okay, yeah, a few people obviously know where they are if you know parts of the world. But in general, you ask the average American, where's Georgia on the map? Where's Kazakhstan? Where's Pakistan? Some people, the only thing they know, they think Pakistanis and Indians are the same. Little do they know that they're actual mortal enemies. If you call an Indian person a Pakistani, he'll probably want to kill you.
You're right.
I'm telling you. You call a Korean Chinese or Chinese a Korean,
You have problem.
you have a problem.
Yeah, it's an offense.
So we're a small, tiny little number. It's a round, not even a rounding error, because if you round 7.9 billion, you don't round 7.9, 2 billion. It's either 7.9 or it's 8 billion. So it's not even a rounding error. And you're part of that nation. That makes you special. We have to decide special how. Special in a bad way, special in a good way. HaShem is telling us that here, many of them, we're not having a lot of emuna. We're not connecting to HaShem on a deep level. Despite all the miracles, despite all the good that He gave them, despite all the tools that He gave them, despite the wealth that they took with them out of Egypt, despite even more wealth that they just found, when he reached the Migdal, which is right at the opening of where the Chazal says is where the sea split. The Sea of Reeds split. There's actually, till today, there is a column, an old column there, and he used to have engravements on it discussing the entire Exodus, the entire story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, from 3,300 years ago. The Egyptians decided to erase everything somewhere around, 20 or 30 years ago. But it literally had the entire story of what happened during the Exodus on this pillar, and according to the sages, that's where the sea split. It's still there today. They just have a sign that's still there, but they erased a lot of the things off of it. Around that area, the nation of Israel, before the Egyptians arrived, found one of the 3 major treasures of Yosef HaTzadik. Joseph, that was the viceroy, which is number 2 behind the Pharaoh, made Egypt so wealthy. He made them so much money that he had to divide up their gold and wealth and diamond in 3 areas. One of the areas was right next to where the Sea of Reeds split. There was a cave over there. And the nation of Israel discovered that gold too. That was part 2 of the wealth that HaShem promised to Avraham Avinu. When Avraham Avinu was told the prophecy, HaShem said they're going to leave with great wealth. So first part of the wealth we got during the plague of blood, when we sold the blood for water, and also the stuff that we took from the Egyptians when we left. The second part we got right before we crossed the ocean. The last part we got after we crossed the ocean and the Egyptians drowned. All their bodies came out and they were all full of gold. To show their honor and their respect and all their pride, they brought all of their wealth with them. Whatever they had left, they brought it with them. So when Hashem drowned them, Israel inherited all of it.
That's why to me it was kind of confusing. How come they go to war and then they go with all the Jews with them?
Show power. When in those days they didn't have power like we have today, where you have F-16s and different special planes and tanks and submarines. Why do you think Russia came to Syria with the biggest submarine in the world full of 200 atomic bombs? They don't need 200 atomic bombs against Syria or even against the entire world. 5, 6 of them destroyed the entire world. They came to show their power, to show their strength. Or to destroy the world, I'm not sure, but most likely to show their strength and their power.
Okay.
So the Egyptians didn't have a submarine, but they had money. They were the strongest country in the world financially. Not only that, they had a lot of people. So they brought 9 million people, if not more, many of which were full of complete gold and jewels and diamonds. Mm-hmm. So when a little peasant, a little, former slave, just a week ago you were a slave, you barely have any food to eat because you had to run out of Egypt, sees this very intimidating soldier that's full of gold. The soldier doesn't have to beat you up. You already lost just by looking at him. It's intimidating. So despite all of this money that Hashem gave him already, gave him the first 2 parts of this treasure, the third part he's going to give him after they cross the ocean. But the first 2 parts, already they lost their emuna. Why? Material doesn't help our emuna. Material hurts our emuna. Having money is a more difficult test than not having money. Because to have a connection with Hashem is much more difficult if you're rich than if you're poor. If you're poor, you need help. So who are you going to cry to? Okay, your parents, fine. After a while, your parents say, okay, you know what, get a job. You cry to your wife says, okay, after a while, go get a job. Cry to your kids, Abba, don't cry to me, I have school homework right now. What do you want for my life? I still need money for my new PlayStation coming out next week. Get a job. You cry to your friends like, listen, buddy, I have my own problems, leave me alone. Nobody wants to hear you. Nobody likes a miserable person. Nobody wants to help a miserable person. Just a reality. Who are you going to cry to? You cry to Hashem. The biggest nightmare for a person is to not have money to feed his kids. Biggest nightmare. You can give him disease, chas v'shalom. You can give him all types of problems. Not having money to feed his kids, might as well go to a concentration camp. It's the biggest nightmare for a person. Whether it's a mother or a father, obviously mom is close to their kids, probably even more than the father is, but nonetheless, someone that cares about their children, which is most normal people, even the thought of not having enough of their kids can bring someone to make decisions that are against logic. Whether it's robbing stores, killing someone, or stealing, they'll do anything to feed their kids. They can't. They will go starving. They don't have a problem. But to have little kids starving, it's not an option. So someone poor has an easy time connection to Hashem if he wants. Someone rich, which is the same person as the guy that goes to the gym. First thing he looks at every morning, most of the time, if he doesn't have Torah already ingrained in him, he looks in the mirror, looks at himself. You ask him, how did you make all this money? The first word out of his mouth is I. I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. There's a famous legend about one of the Rothschild family members. I'm not sure if it's 100% true or not. It may be a different person. The story itself is true. I'm just not sure if it's them or not. That one of these wealthy people got to a point where they were so rich that they had a building where, in essence, the building was just, in essence, to support their gold. The only reason why they had this building was just to have this giant safe to have all their gold in it. And one day, this rich person came into their safe, their fancy safe with all this gold worth an infinite amount of money, and he says, you know what? One thing I know for sure is that even God can't make me go hungry. He has all this money. And at that moment, the automatic door of the safe shut. He could scream as much as he wants. All the employees already went home for the weekend. The employees thought he went away on vacation. 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. No food, no drink, but lots of gold, lots of diamonds. How much are they worth after a week? Nothing.
Nothing.
And that's why on the seventh day, he cut himself, and with his blood, he wrote on the wall what happened, this whole story. And at the end he said, Hashem proved me wrong. And he died on the 8th day. Money is not necessarily something you should pray for as much as we do. Because it's a very, very difficult test. I had somebody came to my Shiur last night. And, we're talking about Emunah, we're talking about getting closer to HaShem, talking about praying really serious. When you pray, it's good to go like this, which is a spiritual way of trying to get some of the thoughts out of your head and focusing on the prayer. He says, I pray that God gives me the ability to buy this condo. First he gives me this condo, and then he continues his speech. So I was going to say it, but sometimes I try to hold my tongue because I'm a little blunt at times. But one of the other guys couldn't hold himself. He goes, that's your dream? That's what, we just had a Shiur Torah for 2 hours. We're doing everything. That's your dream, just to buy this condo? That's it? That's your ultimate dream, just to buy a house? Then what? Then what? Okay, you have a house right now. It's not like you're homeless. You have a house. Okay, so instead of paying interest on a mortgage, you're paying rent. It's not really that much different, by the way. I'm from the finance business. In reality, unless you're buying the house 100% cash, the first 15 years of your 30-year mortgage is complete interest. You're not benefiting in any way, shape, or form over a rent. The only way you're benefiting is if the house appreciates in value. If it goes from $200,000 to $300,000, then of course you made money on other people's money. But if the house goes down in value, then you're better off renting. But nonetheless, it's not a finance class. We're, focus on the Torah. You're thinking about, you just learn Torah, we're trying to get closer to Hashem, but the mind of most people is constantly dragging them to material. They constantly connect Hashem to material. If Hashem gives me this, then I will do this. This is not only a bad idea, it's a sin. You're not allowed to give Hashem conditions. Every day during our prayer, part of our prayer, we say that we're Hashem's servants. When was the last time a servant asked his owner of anything? The fact that Hashem allows us and even wants us to pray to Him and ask for things is already a benefit. It's already a chesed from Hashem to us. But when we're not really doing much for Him and treating Him like He's Santa Claus, give me this and then I'll be a good boy, it's not exactly a rational relationship, to say the least.
It's like behaving like kids.
Worse. At least the kid is a kid. He has an excuse.
Conditions.
We're just bigger. We're just bigger kids. So now, yeah. So now, you have Moshe Rabbeinu is telling the nation of Israel, do not fear, stand fast, and see the salvation of HaShem. And then there's a very good verse here that it's not only a good verse, but it's also a verse that I personally say every day, because the first letter of the verse starts with the letter Yud, which is the first letter of my name, and the last letter of the verse is Nun, which is the last letter of my name, and I say it during the Amidah prayer. At the end of Amidah, there is a section where it's a skula to say a verse out of the Torah that starts with the first letter of your name and ends with the last letter of your name. The reason why this skula exists is because after someone dies, the angel of death comes to him at his grave and asks him what his name is. Now, when you just wake up, you're not exactly alert. So Chazal says that you're going to forget your name. And every time he's going to ask you, he's not going to ask you nicely. He's going to smack you in the head. He's going to keep hitting you until you remember your name. So when you say that, if you say this verse during your prayer every day, you're going to remember your name. So if anyone doesn't have a verse already, tell me, give me your name, and I'll get you a verse, Be'ezrat Hashem, bli neder, as soon as possible, so you could add it to your Amidah, and I'll also show it to you exactly where it is in the Siddur, where it is in the Amidah, so you could add it. So the verse is, Adonai lachem lechem, v'atem techalishun. Hashem shall make war for you, and you shall remain silent. That's what the verse means. You should just sit back and relax. This is verse 14. 14:14. Hashem will take care of everything. You just sit back and relax. It's a wonderful verse. Imagine a life like that. Imagine a life where Hashem will take care of everything and you just sit back and relax and do nothing. That's the definition of Emunah. Because Hashem is doing everything for you anyway. Your parnasah, He gives it to you. Whether you work 5 hours or 18 hours, the parnasah is going to stay the same. He decides what you get. Whether you're male or female, He decides. Small, tall, short, live 80 years, live 60 years, live 150 years, rich, poor. All of these choices are made by Him. The only choice you make is whether you're righteous or not. Whether you have Yirat Shamayim and fear of God or not. That's it. It's the only choice you make in this world. Whether you're going to comply with His mitzvot or not. Excuse me. So now, Hashem is telling you that when you have emunah in me, then you're recognizing that I do everything. Even if you don't recognize it, I still do everything. But when you have emunah, then you're recognizing that I'm doing everything. Now, what's the advantage of recognizing that Hashem is doing it? He's doing it anyway. What's the advantage? Whether I know He's giving me my money or I don't know, He's still giving me my money, right? What's the difference? When you don't have emunah, your thinking is that you're doing it, so you're breaking your head non-stop and wasting your time working non-stop and thinking that everything is in your power. Whether you make the deal, don't make the deal, get the customer, don't get the customer. You think it's in your power. You struggle your whole life. You don't stop worrying, the stress, you lose hair, the kids are annoying you, the wife you wish you never met her, the husband you think he's a curse, your in-laws, everybody you hate them. You're miserable all the time because you're so stressed out. You have no Hashem in your life. Somebody has no Hashem in his life. I'm giving you a description of my past life. I had all the money in the world with no happiness whatsoever. But the reality is, Hashem is telling you, I'm giving you everything anyway. You just didn't recognize it. When you do recognize it, when you do recognize that Hashem is giving it to you anyway, that He's fighting the war for you anyway, what's the advantage? and you shall remain silent. No stress.
No stress.
No anxiety. No worries. Parnasah, he deals with it. IRS, he'll deal with it.
Well,
Foreclosure, he'll deal with it. I'm doing what he wants. I believe in him. I learn his Torah. I do his mitzvot. HaShem, problems? That's yours.
Not yet.
Me, you told me if I do what you say, I shall remain silent. I remain silent.
Yeah.
That's emuna. That's literally, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
It's funny, but it's
But
real.
it is emuna.
That is 100% emuna. That's the
Relax.
definition of 100% emuna. You just relax, do nothing. Problems, HaShem, that's yours. You said you're going to deal with them. You said you're going to fight the war. You said, me, I relax. I sit silent. Okay, I'm sitting silent. It's the only thing I'm saying divrei Torah. I learn Torah. I'm nice to my wife. All of a sudden, the fact that she calls me 87 times a day is okay. The kids breaking half the house is okay. You pay for it, HaShem. Right? On Shabbat, I go shopping. You don't look at the bill. You don't worry about whether it's $3 or $4 for the cookies. Why? Because Hashem said He's going to pay for it. In the Masechet Betzah, it says that every dollar that a person gets is decided on Rosh Hashanah, from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. Your parnasah is decided from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah.
Yes.
But there's one exception. All money that is used for a mitzvah, Shabbat,
Incorrect.
or holidays, or tzedakah, is
Right.
excluded. Is not part of your parnasah. The parnasah is decided one thing. Okay, Hashem says you're going to make $100,000 this year from your job or from other different things. But your tzedakah money, your money you spend on Shabbat to make a nice dinner, have guests, what Hashem she's doing here, it's not part of your parnasah. That's extra. That's money. It's on me. It's not including your parnasah. It's above. As much as you give, I'm going to give you 100% back, if not more.
Either.
That's why when you go shopping for Shabbat, you have guests over, or even if it's just your family, don't worry about whether it's $3 for the cookies or $4 for the cookies. Hashem's paying for it anyway. What do you care? I'm telling you, this is one of the best advices you can give, you could follow as far as Shabbat. That's how you could enjoy. Because sometimes, listen, money is tight. It's tough. Not everybody's making millions. Sometimes money is tight. You're thinking should I buy this? Should I buy that? Should I buy this? Should I buy that? So I learned this from my chavuta, my rabbi, Rabbi Ephraim Kachlon. He says, the whole week we try to do whatever we can. But on Shabbat, I don't look at the bill. I don't look at the cart. Whatever my wife wants, whatever the kids wants, we buy it. And this is an avrech. This is somebody that makes 2,000 shekels a month from the 2,000 shekels, $500 a month from the kolel, and the rest of the money, is purely from Hashem. He doesn't know how he pays his bills every month because the bills are closer to 10,000 shekels a month. So every month he starts with negative 8,000, which is the same thing as every avrech, every person that's learning Torah in Israel. They don't make the money from the yeshiva, from the kollel. The kollel pays them 2,000 shekels a month, $500 a month. But a normal family, even if they're frugal, even if they save, even if they live in conditions we would see as unbearable, it's still going to cost them. Family with 5, 6 kids, it's going to cost them $2,000 a month, which is 8,000 shekels. So you're getting 2,000 from the kollel. You're at the kollel from 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning until 7 or 8 o'clock at night. There's no time for a job. You're learning 12 hours a day. And when you get home, you're with the family for 1 or 2 hours and you study again. You study on your own. You don't watch TV. You're studying all day. And the next day, same thing. Next day, there's no off. There's no vacation. You study nonstop. So there's no time to make money. So how all of these, there's 100,000, approximately 100,000, from what I know, avrechim, people that live like this, where they make 2,000 shekels a month, but the bills are 8,000, 10,000 a month. How they live, no one knows, including them. But every month the bills get paid. To be an avrech is a very, very big privilege because you have to have emunah to do it. You cannot be an avrech without emunah. Unfortunately, a lot of people fall. A lot of people don't make it. They do it for a little while. Maybe they have some savings. They have some help from families, from friends. But then Hashem sends them a test to see where's your emunah really. The money didn't come from the expected place. The extra money that you're missing. The extra 6,000, you got used to that it's coming from Abba and Ima. Or you got used to that it's coming from this big donator from America. It stopped. Let's see what you do now. They get tests. Baruch Hashem, many withhold the test and stay strong. But once in a while you hear where somebody falls. It's rare, but it happens. Hashem is telling us if we do whatever He says, He'll fight our wars for us. This should teach us where we should reach, where we should aim for, as far as emunah. We need to get to a point where we recognize Hashem 100%. That's the goal. How we get there, we're going to get to in a few seconds. After this, Hashem says to Moses, "Why do you cry to me? Speak to the children of Israel and let them journey forth. Ma titzak elai, daber el bnei Israel v'yisau." Now at this time, Moses is, the nation of Israel is crying. Moses cries to Hashem. He tries to keep the nation strong. But at the same time, we're still stuck. Nothing's happening. So he starts crying to Hashem. Hashem says, "Why are you crying to me?" So this is an interesting question. Who else do I cry to? When I cry to Paro, he's trying to kill me. I cry to the desert, it's not going to answer. The ocean, it's also not going to answer. Who else do I cry to? The nation of Israel, they're crying to me. I can't cry to them. Who else do I cry to? So here was the secret behind this. Each nation has an angel. When a nation does good in this world, it gives their angel power. When a nation does bad, sins, it weakens their angel. But each nation has a different purpose. I'm primarily talking about the Jewish nation. When the Jewish people make good and Kiddush Hashem, and they do mitzvot, it gives our angel power. When we make sins, it makes our angel weaker, and it actually makes the enemy angel stronger. So the way this works is that if the nation of Israel makes sins, our angel gets weaker. As our angel gets weaker, the other angels get stronger and decides to pick a fight with him. Take advantage of the fact that he's weaker. If they start fighting in Shamayim, a war begins here. It goes back here. So our actions lead to their fight, which leads to the war down here. It's a boomerang. So the consequence for our actions. The angel of Egypt came with the Egyptians, with the 9 million Egyptians that were coming. He came with them. The Jews started crying because they not only saw 9 million Egyptians, but they also saw an angel. It's like, wow, maybe Hashem left us because He's giving them an angel. They didn't know about this. And the angel goes to Hashem. His name was Mitzrayim, which is also another word, the name of the nation. And he says to Hashem, Hashem, it's not fair. If you're going to split the sea, and you're going to let the Jews pass through it, but drown my people, it wouldn't be fair. Okay, my people, the Egyptians, they're idol worshippers. You are disgusted by idol worship, I understand. Drowning them, you're right. But the Jews are also idol worshippers. They're idol worshippers and they're idol worshippers. Why save one and not the other? So when Moshe Rabbeinu cries to Hashem, says, save us, do something. Hashem says, why are you crying to me? The angel of Mitzrayim has a good argument against you. He has a good case against you. And according to my own laws for myself, I can't split the sea for you. I can't do anything. I made laws, not only for mankind with the Torah, I made laws for myself. I have to give myself limits. Right now, the angel of Mitzrayim has a case against you. I can't split the sea for you. Speak to the children of Israel and move forward. Move forward with a mitzvah. Do something. Do something that could tilt you to the better side. Because right now you're losing. You have to do something. In this case, just saying, Hashem, please help us, is not enough. Hashem, we believe in you, it's not enough. You have to move forward. By moving forward, he's saying, you have to put your emunah into action. Show me that you believe in me. Don't tell me that you believe in me. A husband that tells his wife, I love you every day, but 10 minutes later he slaps her in the face.
Good answer.
The wife says, do me a favor, don't tell me you love me. I'd rather you not love me than don't slap me. Hashem says here, right now, the angel of Mitzrayim, he has a case against you. Telling me you believe in me, it's not going to help you. Crying to me is not going to help you. You need to do something. As Moshe continued to pray to Hashem regardless, Hashem gave him more instructions. He said, lift up your staff and stretch out your arm over the sea and split it. Go, try splitting the sea. Try it. The sea is supposed to be split right now. Go do what I was going to tell you to do anyway, and try to split the sea. Chazal says that the sea didn't split. First time Moshe did it, it didn't happen. Didn't split. This angel of the sea came and also said, listen, it's not fair. Why should I split for idol worshippers? One man saved the entire nation. One man, not Moses, that's rarely heard of, took his emunah into action. His name is Nachshon ben Aminadav, from the tribe of Judah. The tribes were fighting about what's going to happen, what should we do, what you do. Hashem is telling us, move forward. There's an ocean in front of us, where do we move? Nachshon ben Aminadav says, Hashem said, Tamim tiyeh im Hashem. Being, humble with Hashem, be naive with Hashem, just trust whatever He says, have emunah. He says, go forward into the ocean, go forward. We didn't take swimming classes in Egypt, so He obviously knows we're not going to swim across the ocean. I'm going into the ocean. He jumped into the ocean. Started walking into the ocean, all the way to the point where he started to drown. It reached his nose. It was covering his nose, it was covering his mouth. He was drowning. People followed him. They started drowning also, but he was the first, and that's exactly when Hashem split the ocean. That showed Hashem emunah, but in practice.
Action.
Saying you actually believe in Hashem, okay, yeah, I believe, but what are you willing to do to show me? Nachshon was willing to put his life on it. Why? Because Hashem says, Ani Hashem. If I say that I'm going to take you out of Egypt and bring in all the plagues, take you out of Egypt, bring you to the ocean, what, just to kill you? It's not even logical. So you have to not use your logic with Hashem. Just listen to the instructions of what He says. Another interesting midrash is that also it's a misconception that the sea split into two. The sea did not split into two. It split into 12. The way that the sea split, it looks like this. the Rambam wrote it in his book. If you guys probably saw the movie 10 Commandments from, 30 years ago or so, the movie makes it seem like the sea split into two and the nation of Israel went from one side to the next side. That's not necessarily what happened. What actually happened is that the sea split into 12 to give each tribe their own tunnel. And not only that, it didn't go to the other side. It came back to the same side. It was a half a circle. I'll show you the drawing so you can see. Somewhere in here. Here. You can see it. Pass it around. So each tribe, the sea split like a half a circle, meaning that we went from, let's say this is the beach.
The beach.
The ocean split, we went here and we came back to the same beach. We didn't go to the other side.
Yeah.
In the movies, they say that we went to the other side. And common misconception that people think is that we went from here to another side. We didn't. We went from here and we came back to the same side, just a different spot. So this also naturally helped HaShem with the whole concept of the Egyptians, because as the last Jew arrived back at the beach, same side of the beach, the last Egyptian entered the tunnel. So the last Jew that went, the first Jew that arrived back at the beach didn't see the last Egyptian that entered the tunnel.
Yeah, exactly.
So he didn't really know that he went in a circle. An Egyptian went in thinking that the Jews are somewhere else. He couldn't see them because it's a circle, so there's a corner, and you can't see past the corner. And that's why they continued going, and that's when HaShem made Moses bring back the ocean to destroy all the Egyptians except one. The one that was left, it says in verse 14:29, there remain not a one of them, which in Hebrew it says, Lo nishar ba'em ad echad. Chazal says ad echad, one of them actually means there was only one left. Who? Paro. Paro was the only one left. There was a few reasons of why Paro was left. The first reason is because the fact that he went against the nation of Israel scared them, forced them to do tshuva. They gave him some schut, even though he was wicked. Second reason, his free choice during the plagues was removed. He lost his free choice during half the plagues, approximately. Not all of them, but half of them, approximately. Wasn't really his free choice. If he had his free choice, he probably wouldn't have decided to continue keeping Israel. When Hashem removed his choice, he already, at that moment, decided that he's going to have him survive. But also because at the time that Paro, even though he was in the ocean, he saw his entire nation completely destroyed in Egypt, completely destroyed in the ocean. I mean, you're talking about millions and millions of people here drowning and dying. And he's the only one left. At that moment, he recognized God. But completely. And that's why, in the song, a lot of people don't know this, but we say this in our prayer every day. In chapter 15, the nation of Israel starts singing a song. Then Moses and the children of Israel chose to sing a song to Hashem. And they start singing the song. It's a famous song, we say it in our prayer. But there's one part that was always interesting to me, is that there's one word in the song that we say in two different ways. In verse 15:11, it says, Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha ne'edar b'kodesh. Noati Lot Pele. So it says, who is like you among the heavenly powers? Who is like you, mighty in holiness, too awesome for praise, doer of wonders. So Kamocha and Kamocha both mean you, but they're both spelled exactly the same with different vowelization. One is saying Chamocha, and the other one says Kamocha. This is not a mistake. Every single dot, every single vowel, every single letter, every single verse in the Torah is there for a reason. So when you say it in your prayer, you say it every day. Why do we say Chamocha one time? And the very same sentence, not like it's like a different paragraph. Very same sentence, you're saying Chamocha and Kamocha. It's because in this song, the Chamocha was actually said by Pharaoh. The Kamocha was said by Am Yisrael. Who is like you? The first time you said Chamocha because Pharaoh was completely without energy. He was floating in the ocean, recognizing God, but he didn't have the energy. So he didn't have the energy to say Ka. So he said Chamocha. The nation of Israel had a lot of energy. They just crossed the ocean. So they said Ka. So the next time you read it, it'll probably make you look at it a little bit differently. And it's something that we read every day but never notice what it is. I always thought it was a mistake. Honestly, I did. So somebody's forgot the dot. After that, we're not going to get into the details of it, but actually after this, if you know the story of Jonah, Jonah went to was commanded by HaShem to go to the city of Nineveh and tell them to do tshuva. And the city did tshuva, after the whole story, but the city did tshuva, 40 days. The king of Nineveh was Paro. Same Paro that we're talking about right here. He survived. He went and became the king of Nineveh. And that's why when Jonah came to a bunch of goyim, he didn't go to Jews. He went to goyim. What goyim? What does Hashem care about these goyim doing tshuva? He went there because because Paro knew who God was more than the goyim. He saw God already. He saw what happened. So when Jonah came and said, "Listen, if your nation doesn't do tshuva in the next 40 days, he's destroying the entire nation." Everyone did tshuva. Everyone did tshuva. So Hashem sent them to a nation of non-Jews because he knew that they could do tshuva. He doesn't give us any test we can't pass. So now we talked a lot about emuna, but how do we get there? There's two things that we need to understand. Emuna is not something that you could just wake up and have. It's something you have to work on. In the last verse of chapter 14, verse 31, it says, וירא ישראל את היד הגדולה אשר עשה אדוני במצרים, ויראו העם את אדוני, ויאמינו באדוני ובמשה עבדו. On that day, Hashem Israel saw the great hand that Hashem inflicted upon Egypt, and the people revered Hashem, and they had faith in Hashem and in Moses, his servant. Got it?
Yeah.
This is a very, very important verse to understand the order of how things work. So first says that Israel saw the great hand of Hashem. Hashem doesn't have a hand. He doesn't have a body. So what does it mean when it says Hashem, they saw the great hand of Hashem? They saw the Creator's creation. You can understand the Creator, the significance of the Creator, only by His creation. Because one of the 13 principles of faith is that He has no image or the likeness of an image. So when it's saying here, great hand of Hashem, or Hashem got angry, or Hashem's, anything like that, Hashem is not limited to anything physical or emotions. Right. So the key is to understand is that this is just for us to understand how to read it. But The meaning here is that when you know a hand has some, you do something with hand, you take action with hand. So here he's telling us that first, the nation of Israel, they recognized the Creator's creation, the Creator's power, the work of HaShem. So the first thing we need to do is look around. Look at the Creator's creation. The only way we can connect to Hashem is first to recognize that Hashem exists. If you want Hashem in your life, pay attention to what He did.
Right.
Whether it's your own body, and the recognition that the smallest cell in your body is more advanced than this entire world. Smallest, tiniest cell. If you look at just a cell, for example, just a tiny little cell, in the science book that I gave you guys, is at the end of the book, it talks about the cities of the future. And it's really giving you the reality of a single cell, but being treated as if it's a city. And it tells you that this city is connected to all the other cities, where that city knows what every other city everywhere else is doing, and every other city knows what that city is doing. That city is exact and very precise to have protection walls around it, only to allow only the things that it wants in and only the things that it wants out. And not only does it make sure that only things that it wants go in and go out, but the amounts that come in and out have to be exact. It's not like the supermarket where they order $500,000 worth of goods and 300,000 of it goes to the garbage because it goes bad, and they sell 200,000 and hope to survive the month just by making a small profit margin off of the 200,000 they sold. Grocery store, if they sell vegetables, being in a vegetable business is very difficult. Why? Because if you don't sell your vegetables right away, they go bad. And people are not willing to buy it. So if you go into the vegetable or fruit business, you already have to have it as part of your calculation that a large number of your goods, of your merchandise, is going to go bad. It's not like a clothing store, or a computer store, or a car shop where it's, that, okay, even if they don't buy it today, they could buy it tomorrow or next week. As a matter of fact, something that's very interesting about the car business, and it shows you how fake this world is that when you go to every car lot that's a brand new car lot, the salesman is very adamant to make sure that he's giving you, tell you that he's giving you a good deal. This car is, $30,000, $40,000. It's made with this parts, and it's really worth $40,000. It's in a great car, and yada, 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 yada. And I bet you the salesman himself doesn't know even that every car manufacturer overproduces the number of cars that they need every year. So for example, if General Motors knows that they're going to sell 1 million cars, they're not going to produce 1 million cars. They may produce 7 million cars or 6 million cars. Why are they producing so many more? And what do they do with the rest? Those are two good questions, right? The reason why they produce so many is because General Motors is not a private business. They're a public company. So people are expecting them to show growth. They're expecting them to continue to grow every 3 months when they announce their earnings. They expect them to be better than the previous 3 months and better than the previous year. And if they're not growing, the stock will go down. If they are growing, the stock will go up. So even though they know they're only going to sell 1 million, I'm just making up these numbers, but as a hypothetical, but it is a fact, everything I'm telling you. Even though they know they're only going to actually sell 1 million cars, they're still going to produce 6 million because the shareholders that are going to buy their stock expect them to have 6 million produced. They don't care if they're going to sell 1 million or no. They should expect them to make 6 million because that may give the indication that they have the ability to sell 6 million even though they don't sell 6 million. They sell 1 million. So the next question is, what do they do with the next 5 million? If you go on Google Maps, there's actually a website, great website, does great research called Zero Hedge. That's actually where I found this out years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago. Maybe less. I was doing some research in the finance business and found this. There's actually on Google Maps, there are different lots of land around the world, all over America, in England, all over Europe, all over the world. Huge lots of land the size of cities. I'm not talking about lots of land like your car shop here. I'm talking about the size of, Boca Raton or Miami. Like huge lots of land that you can see from outer space, full of brand new cars that will never ever be sold. It's all the extra cars that they produce and never ever sell. And they're going to destroy all of those cars. But they can't destroy them fast enough. So they have to take on all of this huge, massive amount of land until they eventually destroy them. And they can't. I said the first question I asked is, why don't they just sell them for less? Okay, the car was worth, a week ago, was worth $30,000 at the car lot. The salesman was really convincing. He told me it's worth $30,000. Today it's worth bupkis. It's worth nothing. So instead of that, sell for $5,000. Everybody's going to buy one. Even if you don't need it, you buy it. The car's worth $30,000, you buy it for $5,000. Why not?
Yeah.
Right? You have 5 million of them.
Yeah.
Better than destroying them? No. They don't want to destroy the value. They rather destroy them than sell it for a discount, which is completely mental. It's completely ridiculous.
Killer car.
But it would destroy the car market, according to them. So they rather lose billions and billions of dollars on this massive production just to make sure that the illusion that they're growing continues. It's all illusion. It's all a complete illusion. You're showing the world that you're growing, but in reality, you're suffering with cancer inside. And that's the car business. So here you have HaShem telling you, get out of the illusion. Get out of the illusion and open your eyes and look at what I've done for you. The cells in your body are very precise to the point that they're more sophisticated than the entire world around you. Just one cell, tiny cell that you can't see with the naked eye. You need a microscope. One cell has more technology in it than all the computers in the world. One tiny cell. He's telling you if you pay attention to just one cell, even more. You pay attention to the technology of your eye, even more. You pay attention to just the proteins in your body and how they work. Where if the proteins in your body don't fold the right way, you lose your ability to eat, sleep, walk, breathe, function. You have trillions amongst trillions of proteins in your body, and each one of them has to have something called a protein fold, where it has to fold a certain way, a precise way. If it folds the wrong way, chas v'shalom, you're crippled. Chas v'shalom, can't see. Chas v'shalom, can't breathe, dies. One, this is a microscopic thing. You have trillions amongst trillions of them, and every one of them has to fold exactly the same way. One scientist tried to figure out what are the chances of one protein folding the right way. And he says, in order to just, not to figure out what the chances are, but to figure out how to figure out what the chances are, would take an infinite amount of time. If I used all of the computer power in the world, it would take me 10 to the 127th power in years, pretty much infinity in years, just to figure out how to figure it out. And this is what you have in your body. Every day. When you open your eyes, you breathe in, you breathe out, you eat, you chew, your teeth. I mean, ever think about your teeth? If your teeth were lined up the wrong way, not like they are right now. Right now you have your molars in the back. What if the molars were in the front? You change things a little bit. You'd be like an animal. Why? Because the molars are on the side, you chew in the back. You don't chew in the front. You just break something in the front and you cut it in the front, but you chew in the back. Now when you chew, all of the food goes against your cheek. Now if you chewed in front, there'd be nothing to protect the food. Everything would go out of your mouth. So your teeth are lined up precisely also. But you also know that the material that makes up your teeth and the material that makes up your nose is exactly the same. Same exact thing. But this one is very, very hard and can break very, very hard things. And this one, nothing. Same material. HaShem says if you pay attention to my creation, you'll understand the significance of the Creator. That's step one. After Israel saw the great hand that Hashem inflicted upon Egypt, they recognized the creation, and the people revered Hashem. Immediately they became scared of Hashem. Immediately they Yirat Shamayim. Yirat Shamayim is fear of Hashem, fear of the Almighty. Why are they scared? As soon as you realize how significant He is, you also realize how much of a nothing we are. As soon as you realize who and what He is, you realize how much you depend on Him, and everything is dependent on Him. Nothing is in your control. When you realize this, how could you not be scared? Technically, all the time, you should be praying 24 hours a day. We should all be praying 24 hours a day. Please, Hashem, make my body work. Make my body work. Forget about Parnassah. No, Parnassah, let me be homeless. Who cares? Make my body work. Just let me live another second. Every second is a gift. Every second is a gift. As soon as they saw the Creator's creation, they immediately became scared. And after they became scared, and they had faith in Hashem and in Moses, his servant. Vayeru ha'am et Adonai, vayaminu ba'Adonai u'Moshe avdo. Only after they saw the Creator's and recognized the Creator's creation, they feared Him. After they feared Him, then they believed in Him. You cannot believe in God without being scared of Him. All this mumbo jumbo that people sell Jews in the world and Christians and others, that you can love God and connect to God and you don't need to be scared and He's all loving and everything is great and there's nothing to be scared about. It's all nonsense. Mm-hmm. If you know what God is, even to our understanding, of course, if you're not scared, you're either mentally ill or you really don't believe in Him. You just think it's a nice story. There's no such thing as believing in God or loving God without being scared of Him. And this is a verse that tells you exactly how to get to that point. First, you have to recognize that He exists, recognize His creation. Once you recognize that He exists in His creation and His significance, of course you're going to be scared. And only after you're scared, then you actually have faith. Then you could get to a point of believing in God. Only then does it say, Vayaminu ba'Adonai. Which means that if you're not scared of God, there's a part of you that doesn't believe in Him. You can tell yourself all you want, and we can tell ourselves all I want that we believe in God. If part of us is not scared of God, then that means that part doesn't believe in Him at all. It believes in something, but not the real God. Maybe Santa Claus. And if you believe in God, then you can get to the point of believing in His servant Moshe. What does it mean, believing in His servant Moshe? once you believe in God, then you're going to listen to his servants. The righteous Jews, the rabbis that are going to teach you his words. We don't have the privilege of talking to God like Moses did. That's why God sent rabbis and different people to teach us his Torah. Only if you believe in God are you going to be able to believe in his servants. But so long as you have doubts, you're also going to have doubts in learning too. But if you get to that point, then you can go to the next verse. And the next verse says, "Then Moses and the children of Israel chose to sing." Once you recognize the Creator's creation, you'll immediately be scared. Once you're scared, you'll have belief. Belief in God. Once you have belief in God, you're going to listen to what the rabbis say, the righteous ones, not the ones that just collect money. You're going to listen to what they say and do the words of God. You can put them into action. And if you do what HaShem says, then your life will be like a whole song. Then you can sing. The problems, the stress, the issues, has nothing to do with you. It's Hashem's problems. He already told us before. He's going to fight our war, and we sit silent. After this song, and we'll finalize with that, after this song, let's just questions. Questions are always good. We have the whole story of the manna, where the nation of Israel complains again to HaShem. This is at the end of chapter 15. No, actually, it's a different section. The manna is, the 16, chapter 16. We get the manna, we complain to Hashem, He gives us two types of food. First, He gives us meat, because we cry that we want meat, so He gives us slav. Slav is quail. That's in verse 13. But in addition to that, He gives us the manna. Manna is food from heaven. Rabbi Ishmael says that the manna was was food that was completely absorbed by our blood system, where Am Yisrael did not have to go to the bathroom for 40 years. Why? Because every food that you eat, part of the food turns into blood. That's why people say you are what you eat. Your food turns into blood. Mm-hmm. That's why when you eat taref, you eat pig, you eat animals that are vicious or disgusting, you become disgusting. Not only spiritually, but also physically. You see, people that eat that type of food generally are not exactly they don't have the best midot in the world. And they're not the healthiest people in the world. For anyone that was watching this, Baruch Hashem, I know everybody here doesn't eat this stuff, but anyone that's watching this but still has a doubt about eating pig, aside from it constantly being talked about in the Torah several times not to eat pig and other animals like it, but it specifically mentions pig, camel, and others, there's many proofs today of how no one should ever eat pig. Not just Jews, but no one. No one should ever eat pig at all. It's a disgusting animal. Everyone always knew it's a disgusting animal, but there's a very easy way to prove that it's a disgusting animal amongst all of the animals out there, is that a pig, unlike all other animals, does not sweat, does not have sweat glands. Which means that when you sweat, you're removing toxins out of your body. So if you don't sweat, all the toxins stay inside.
Yeah.
Now, if you, rather than doing this because it's kind of disgusting, you can watch a YouTube video instead. you can see what people did. They bought a piece of pork, and they poured on it Coca-Cola. And within a short period of time, it's just a fresh piece of meat from, I don't know, Costco or wherever they sell this disgusting meat, but nonetheless, it's a fresh piece of meat. They put Coca-Cola on it, and you see all of the worms and maggots come out of the pig. This is a fresh piece of meat. This doesn't happen with other animals. Which means that it's impossible for pig meat to ever not have bugs and worms and disgusting things that nobody in their right mind would ever want to eat. That's all the toxins. So, yeah, it's disgusting, but it's good to know because unfortunately a lot of people enjoy the taste, not realizing how much harm they're creating for their body. Every time that Hashem gave us a mitzvah, He gave it to us for a reason. There's always a benefit to it. The real reason of why we do all mitzvot is because Hashem said so. The fact that there's a benefit is the chesed from Hashem. It's good, it's great. But now we got to a point where we're so far, our generation is so far from Hashem, that unless we see a benefit, sometimes we decide not to do it. So it's good to discuss the benefits of these things. Whether it's circumcision and how it's better for a male to be circumcised throughout their entire life for health reasons, or it's kosher meat, much better quality meat. When an animal is slaughtered in a kosher way, it does the animal's defense system does not attack itself, whereas when an animal is slaughtered or killed in a non-kosher way, its own defense system goes against it, which means that the meat of its own body becomes full of toxins, even if it's not pig. There's many, many benefits to doing the mitzvot. In our generation, we're finding out about those benefits, which is good and bad. On one end, it's good because it's giving us more, strength to do what we need to do. Anyway, on another end, it also shows us how far we are because our grandparents didn't need this.
Question.
Our grandparents didn't need this. One good thing, though, by the way, if anybody ever wants to test it, is by going to righteous farmers. If you go to a righteous farmer, in Israel and you that observe the mitzvot, a farmer is obligated to stop all work on the 7th year. Now Hashem made a deal with anyone that's growing, where He said, on the 6th year, you work 6 years. On the 7th year, it's a sabbatical year. So the first question is, what can I do? The answer is nothing. You leave everything there. You're not allowed to touch it, not allowed to sell it, not allowed to do anything. How could I? So you have big business. It's not like a tiny little garden in the backyard. It's a farm. You have all these fruits and vegetables. All of it's going to go bad. Hashem says, don't worry. On the 6th year, I will give you enough for 3 years. For the 6th year, for the 7th year, that you're not going to be making any income, and for the 8th year. Why the 8th year? Because even after you start working, it's not going to go back to where it was right away.
It's the beginning.
And this is a proof that we see today with farmers. It's still going on today. Not all farmers unfortunately do this, but righteous Jewish farmers that do this, they see the miracle with their own eyes. On the 6th, every year they work the same thing. It's not like they work extra on the 6th year. It's the same thing. But on the 6th year, the amount of produce that grows is 3 times the normal. Without them doing any more work. They make 3 times the amount of money on the 6th year. Something unbelievable. So there's many, many ways of seeing proofs of God if we just pay attention to the details, whether it's through farming or our body or science or whatever you want. There's many, many ways of getting to this point. But unfortunately, the nation of Israel constantly doubts, and during the time that we got the manna was one of those times that we went to Hashem and didn't have enough faith in Him again. Because when He told us, listen, take the parnassah that I'm giving you, eat everything that I'm giving you, and pray to me again, So I'll give you tomorrow. Because if Hashem just wanted to feed us, if it was purely about feeding us, then He would give us the manna once, like a pill, and we'd never have to eat for 40 years, just like we didn't have to take a shower, and we didn't have to go to the bathroom. So Hashem is beyond power. He's beyond any limitations. If it's just about feeding us, He just say, okay, I'm turning off the feeding button in your body. It's not going to work anymore. For the next 40 years, you don't have to eat. Just like Moshe Rabbeinu, when he went up to Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights, he didn't eat, he didn't drink, he didn't sleep. He was completely spiritual. That's not possible for a human body if the human body is depending on itself. So if Hashem wanted to just feed us, He could just give us, even if He wanted us to act naturally, He would just give us enough manna to follow us, and we would just eat every day. But instead, He gave it to us every day. The reason why is because if He would have given it to us once, we would have forgotten about Him. If Hashem gave us the manna just one time, we wouldn't look up every day. It's just like, for example, if someone that's rich wants to make the biggest mistake in their life, give their money to their kids while they're alive. Like if someone that's rich has a lot of money and he wants to make a mistake, then he should give the inheritance to the kids while he's alive, not when he's dead. Why? Because if he gives the money to his kids while he's alive, he's going to see what it's really about. And there's actually a famous story where someone did just that. He gave all of his kids his money, control of his money, and all of a sudden, they weren't coming over for Shabbat. They were too busy to visit, too busy for this. I'm running the business, I'm doing this, maybe next week, maybe next month. All of a sudden, the father went from being the most important person in the family to our father, but, we're too busy for him. So the father went to a rabbi and he said, what should I do? The rabbi said, you made a very big mistake, but I'll help you. What can you do? He says, tomorrow, you call your sons and you tell them, listen, you need help. And when they ask you what, tell them, listen, I need you to help me bring this big safe that I just bought to the house. I need you to help me with it. And they're going to ask you naturally, what do you need such a big safe? You gave us all the money. No, I just gave you the cash. The real money that I have is a bunch of diamonds and jewels. And I'm changing places. I need the safe for it. And that's exactly what happened. A safe shows up. They think it's full of money and jewels and diamonds. And all of a sudden, each one of the brothers is showing up and fighting over the father. He's going to come to my house for Shabbat. No, my house for Shabbat. No, he's going to come for me. My wife needs to see him. The kids, no, why? They're fighting over him now. He lived 7 more years. After he died, everyone shows up at the lawyer's office and they open the envelope. Here's the key to the safe. They go, everybody's excited to open this massive safe. If the millions that he gave us already was not his real money, imagine what's in this safe. We've been waiting and serving him for 7 years. They open the safe and they see a letter. This is a gift to my wicked sons who, after I gave them my money, forgot who I even was. So the only way that I can get my righteous sons back is by telling them I have more. This is some of the things we have to realize. When we get a lot from Hashem, we can't be like these wicked sons. We have to be like the righteous ones. We have to fight for Him. You see someone saying bad things about Hashem, you got to fight for Him. You see somebody saying bad things about the Torah, you got to fight for him. You got to defend Hashem. You got to be the righteous son. Don't be the ones, oh no, He gives me so much, let somebody else deal with that problem. It's not my problem. Somebody told me the other day, why are you so involved in this whole Rabbi Mizrahi debate where, people are bad-mouthing him and even though it's all lies, but nonetheless, people like to say lashon hara. He says, why are you so involved? I said, what do you mean? How could I not be involved? This is what you're obligated to do also. If you believe in the Torah, you're obligated to defend the truth. He goes, it's not your fight. This is what he tells me. It's not your fight. I said, it's the fight between good and evil. If that's not my fight, what's my fight then? What's the point? If you're not fighting for good, then you're on the other side. There's no middle. There's no such thing as that, no, let somebody else worry about it. Listen, I have to take care of my own problems. I can't. I have, my $100 million that I have in the bank. It's busy in investments. This yeshiva, let it close down. We'll worry about something else. Let somebody else donate to this yeshiva. That's what some people say. They know that some yeshivas are having problems. They can't barely survive. And they have the money. But they don't care. They don't care to help. They don't care to help people that need. I'm telling you, the more people are in need, the more people that have don't want to help. The only people that people want to help are people that don't need help. Like everyone wants to lend Bill Gates money. But no one wants to lend someone that doesn't have any money. It's just a reality. The only way we can do what's truly right and good is by first acknowledging what it even is. If we leave right and good to our own subjective definition, if we're using our own definition to determine what's good or bad, we're guaranteed to make mistakes constantly. Because we don't really know what's good and bad. We determine what's good and bad based on our opinion. One person may think that going to the beach and hanging out naked is great, whereas the rest of his community is going to think he's a psychopath. They don't want to live next to him. One person may think that it's okay to steal from people, while the rest of his community is to say this guy there's something wrong with him. But he's saying, no, but I'm stealing to feed my kids. The rest of the community is going to say, okay, go get a job instead. What do you have to steal for? No, but my kids want a lot. They want PlayStation and Xbox and Game Boy and this one and that one. Okay, go get a job. He goes, no, but I had a job, but I can't afford all those things. Okay, so don't buy them. So his definition of good is obviously flawed. He thinks that he's doing good by stealing because the stealing is helping him give his kids everything. But giving his kids everything is really destroying the kids. And his own life. So if we leave the definition of good to ourselves, we destroy ourselves spiritually and materially and in every way possible. We can only listen to the instructions of HaShem. When the nation of Israel questioned HaShem about the manna, they made the mistake of not listening to what he said, and instead of eating everything he gave them and trusting that he's going to give them more tomorrow, they tried to save it for tomorrow. This showed, again, a lack of emunah. Because they said, okay, he's giving us food today, but maybe he's not going to give us tomorrow. So they saved it. And obviously the food went bad immediately. To show them, everything turned into worms and maggots. Moses got very furious at them. And then, on Shabbat, when he told them they got the Shabbat, the mitzvah of Shabbat, before they got the Torah. We heard about the Shabbat here in this parasha, where Moses is telling them, listen, collect on Friday food for Friday and Saturday, because on Saturday, on Shabbat, you're not going to have man. Don't go looking for it. You're not allowed to go looking for it. It's Shabbat, it's the day you rest. So we already got the Shabbat before we got the written Torah in Mount Sinai. This again is another one of the many proofs that the foundation of Judaism cannot exist without its main pillar, which is Shabbat. There's no tshuva without Shabbat. There's no Judaism without Shabbat. There's no connection to HaShem without Shabbat. You could do tefillin 5 times a day. You can pray 24 hours a day. You can learn Torah and know everything by heart. You don't keep Shabbat, it's all worthless. It's bottom line. It's not what I say, this is what God says. Someone could do the 613 mitzvot even though technically you can't do 613 mitzvot because some of them apply to women and you're a guy, or some of them apply to men and you're a woman, or some of them apply to the Bet HaMikdash and we don't have one, some of them apply to the Cohens and you're not a Cohen, so you can't really do 613 mitzvot. So a lot of people are scared of the 613. In reality, you maybe could do 150, 200 at best. But let's just say you found a glitch in the system and you did 612 mitzvot. Except one. And the name of that mitzvah is Shabbat. Worthless. Your 612 are worthless. No share of the world to come. That's what Shabbat is. If that doesn't give you an understanding of what Shabbat is, of how much of a foundation it is, nothing else will. I could tell you about punishments and Gehenom and all that stuff and scare you to death, but it's not going to help. Because if you need to have common sense here. It's not about being scared only. It's about common sense. Without a foundation, nothing can exist. And that's what Shabbat is. That's why we got the Shabbat, and it's mentioned literally in this parasha, before we got the written Torah. And the nation of Israel obviously made a mistake here again. Moses told them, don't go collecting on Shabbat. And a few of them went and tried collecting some manna. HaShem obviously wasn't very happy with them. Moses obviously was not very happy with them. And he tells, God tells to Moses, how long is it going to be, how long will you refuse to observe my commandments and my teachings? That's in verse, it's 16:28. Chapter 16:28. Hashem said to Moses, how long will you refuse to observe my commandments and my teachings? Which is, Lishmor mitzvotai v'toratai. So this thing teaches us a few things. Number one, it teaches us that the mitzvot and the Torah are two separate things. Two, it uses the word Torahs, not Torah, not singular. It's plural. Why? Because he's referring to both the written Torah and the oral Torah. Some people say, where does it say oral Torah in the Torah? When Hashem refers to the Torah, in many cases during in the Torah, it's referring to Torahs, plural, more than one Torah. So if it was just the written Torah, which is what I have in front of me, then it would be Torah, no S. So here, it actually says again, Torahs. So it's more than one. So that's referring to both written and oral Torah. So he's telling you, how long are you going to refuse to observe my commandments, my teachings? I only gave you guys are on the 49th level of Tumah. You're one sin away from being destroyed like the other 80 or 99% that I destroyed. That's why I gave you the manna. Because I needed to purify you. You can't get the Torah unless you become purified. But in order for you to be purified, you can't just eat the food. You can't just eat the manna. You have to do some mitzvot. That's why I gave you some mitzvot. I gave you Rosh Chodesh. I just gave you Shabbat. I gave you a few things to do so you could go down from 49 levels. But now you're already violating the Shabbat. To look for the food that's going to help you, it's like drinking poison and expecting somebody else to die. Doesn't make any sense. How do you think that you're going to look for manna to help you become more spiritual by violating the most spiritual thing that I ever gave you and ever will give you, which is Shabbat? How could you do it? Doesn't make any sense. How long are you going to refuse? Why are they refusing? It's not that because they want to go to war with Hashem Chas v'Shalom. They're refusing Because they have no emuna. Same reason why people work on Shabbat. They don't work on Shabbat because they want to go to war with Hashem. Nobody wants to go to war with Hashem. Even the wicked don't want to go to war with Hashem. Only one wicked person that I know of in history, which his name was Titus, actually wanted to go to war with Hashem. He was stupid, so he did it. But normal people don't want to go to war with Hashem. Even if you don't like him, you still don't want to go with him. Even if you don't believe in him, you're still not going to want to do it. If it exists, then you say to yourself, I don't want to go to war. If it exists, I don't want to go to war with him. No one that's logical would ever want to go to war. So people that are violating, whether it's today or 3,000 years ago, are violating the mitzvot, it's not because they want to go to war with him. It's because they don't believe in him. Or they don't know about him. Most Jews know what Shabbat is. Most Jews have heard what Judaism is and what the Torah is. But just because they've heard that there's a day in the week called Shabbat does not mean they know what it actually means. What's the consequences of not keeping it? I know myself, before I did tshuva, may Hashem forgive me for all my sins, before I did tshuva, I thought that if I don't work on Shabbat, that's enough for my level. Like, I thought that there's levels of keeping it. I figured that, okay, listen, I'm not working on Shabbat. Instead, I'm going to, I don't know, vacation or play cards or do whatever other nonsense I did at that time in my life. So I figured that if I don't work, that's enough. Why? Come on, I don't have to drive and use electricity and watch TV and go to movies and use money, go to restaurants. What's so bad about it? What does Hashem really care if I do all those things? I'm relaxing. That's my relaxation. I go to the casino, I put $30,000 on the table to play Texas Hold'em. That's my relaxation. He said, Shabbat, you're supposed to rest. I'm resting on the poker table. That's my illogical logic. That's the human logic that's flawed. I don't consider myself stupid. So, but that was my logic. He said, rest, I'm resting. And I'm even resting better if I win a hand, another 30,000. It's more fun for me. So I'm thinking that I'm not necessarily a tzaddik, but I'm not wicked. I'm not an enemy of Hashem. My prayers will still be answered. I could still be counted in the minyan. I was wrong about all of it. Violate Shabbat, you can't be counted in the minyan. Violate Shabbat, your prayers will not be answered. Violate Shabbat, you are an enemy of Hashem. This is Torah saying, not me. Obviously, Hashem keeps you in this world because He doesn't want you to be His enemy. Didn't want me to continue being His enemy. He knew my potential. He knew that I could potentially keep Shabbat at some point or another. Even though He had to put me through my own version of Gehinnom to get to that point, but nonetheless, I got there. Everyone else that's watching this, that's here, that hasn't gotten there, can get there, can get better, much higher levels than I ever can. It's not that hard. It's just fighting the Yetzer Hara. The question is, how stubborn are we? How much of a Kshe Olef nation are we? If we're a stubborn, stiff-necked nation, then we have to go through Egypt in order to do tshuva. But if we're wise people, we just follow the instructions and have Emunah that it's all going to work out and He's going to fight our wars. When you pay attention to His details, you're going to be scared of Him. When you're scared of Him, that's already a very high level of tshuva. Very high level. I wish that we could truly be scared of Hashem. Like we are scared of mankind. No one's scared of Hashem like they are scared of mankind. Hashem, you violate one of His major mitzvot, you don't cry even for 1 second about it. A cop pulls you over, oh, you're going to cry for a week because he gave you a $300 ticket. That's reality. Before he even pulled you over, you're already scared that maybe he's going to turn the light. Every time somebody passes a cop, they always look in the mirror. Is he going to pull me over? He's going to pull me over. I drove 70 on a 60. I'm not sure. Everybody's scared of this cop. Nobody's scared of Hashem. So if we're scared of him, then we can believe in him. If we believe in him, then we're going to listen to the teachings. If we listen to the teachings, then we can sing. At the end of this parasha, we went to war with the nation of Amalek. The nation of Amalek is our eternal enemy. They only exist to go to war with Israel. That's it. There's no other purpose for their creation. Hashem created them purely as the source of evil. That's a tool for him to wake us up. That's it. And that's why when Moses chose Joshua, Yeshua ben Nun, to pick the soldiers and go to this spiritual war. It wasn't just a physical war. It was a spiritual war. Moses had to stay on the mountain with his hands up in order for us to win the war. So obviously you already see this is not a normal war. What does him standing up on his mountain with his hands up really matter for somebody with a sword? So you already see that this is not a natural war. One of the reasons he was standing up was to keep the sun in the sky. Because the Amalekites would win the war if the sun went down and became dark. So this was, according to the sages, this war was completely spiritual, barely, the weapons didn't matter. There was a lot of special effects, if you will. And Moses had to win it with the nation of Israel through spirituality, through connection with Hashem, through 100% emuna. And that's why it says here at the end, in 17:12, Moses' hands grew heavy, so he took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it, and Aaron and Hur was the brother-in-law of Moses and Aaron. He was the husband of Miriam. Supported his hands, one on this side and one on that side, and he remained with his hands in faithful prayer until sunset. So, not just prayer, but faithful prayer. There's a difference between going to Beit Knesset and just going to the prayer and finishing the prayer in 2 seconds just so I can go home, or maybe just talk to the guys and finish. Or even praying at the house just so I can say, okay, Hashem, I did tefillin today. It took me about 2.5 minutes. Hopefully it takes me 2 minutes tomorrow. Let me go to work and make money now. Mm-hmm. That's one form of prayer. And in this prayer, where you spill your heart out to Hashem. Prayer that you're really talking to Hashem and don't think about anything else. That's the ideal prayer. In the beginning, and even later on, it's not easy to get to that level of prayer every time. That's why the sages used to meditate for an hour before they would pray, just to get ready for the prayer. And they would meditate an hour after the prayer to go down from the level that they got to during prayer, to get back to normal. That's serious prayer. Obviously, we're not at that level. But what he's telling us here is very simple. If you're going to pray, at least understand what you're saying and believe it. Have a prayer that's full of emunah. Don't just say, Hashem do this, Hashem do this, Hashem please this, Hashem help me, but believe that Hashem is going to help you. Give him a reason to, obviously, but believe in what you're saying. Know what you're saying. This is one of the main things that is the foundation of emunah. When we have the mitzvot that Hashem was telling us we needed to have, when we didn't do, he says, how long are you not going to do mitzvotai v'toratai? So he's telling us two things we need. We need the mitzvot, we need the Torah. And Moses is telling us here is the way to tell Hashem about all of the mitzvot and the Torah that we're practicing is through our emunah and our tefillah. Obviously, each part of these four is built up. It's not as simple to say mitzvot. It's not as simple to say Torah. It's not as simple as to say emunah. It's not as simple to say tefillah. Each one of them is built up. But those are the four pillars of a true connection to Hashem that's complete. We need to work on each one of them every day, a little bit every day. You can't get to completion overnight, and that's why I tell you that when everyone's talking about Mashiach, and everyone's talking about, what's going to happen at the end of time, oh, maybe I could do, tshuva at the last minute. Tshuva takes time. It's not an overnight process. Someone sold a story one time that you could do tshuva in 1 second, in the last second before somebody dies, and he didn't sell it well. Even though technically it's true, it's not true like people understand it. Someone can do tshuva in the last minute of their life means that someone is gotten to a point where he's in the last minute of their life, they're on their deathbed, and they recognize Hashem, and they feel bad for the bad things they did. That is a level of tshuva. But I can assure you, that's not enough. It's a level of tshuva which can turn some of the sins that you're aware that you did into shogeg, which means not on purpose, but it doesn't turn them into mitzvot. So if we spent our entire life making sins, and in the last minute of our life we realize, okay, we made this sin and that sin and this sin, and I feel bad now, okay, great. Now you have those sins that turn into accidental sins, so the punishment is less, but you're still missing out on mitzvot. You're still going to arrive up there with no mitzvot. You still can't go to Olam Haba or Gan Eden or any of that stuff. So to say that I could just do tshuva in the last minute, it's not realistic. To do tshuva takes time. You have to, number one, stop sinning. 2, start collecting the diamonds. Start collecting the mitzvot so you could arrive up there with some serious wealth, real wealth that you can keep. And the way to do these things is through the Torah. You can't do mitzvot without Torah. Why? Because even if you like to give tzedakah here and there, or you like to do a mitzvah here and there, without knowing the reason why, eventually you're going to stop. It's just a trend. You used to give $1 every day to this homeless guy. Okay, eventually the homeless guy moves. Then what? Or you like to do a mitzvah, you have no idea whatsoever why you're wearing the kippah on your head, because, right now it's a problem in Europe to wear a kippah. So people are saying, no, you should wear a kippah, you should wear a kippah, you should wear a kippah. No one's talking about why you should wear a kippah. Why even, it's not enough people talking about why we wear a kippah, why we wear a tzitzit, why we do these mitzvot, why we do all of these things. To just show that we're proud of being Jewish, okay, great, but it's not enough. Okay, so we go through a trend. So we wear a kippah for 3 months, 6 months, a year, and then it's over. Okay, the trend is over. I take the kippah, put it back. Just like what happened after September 11th. Every American house had an American flag. September 11th happened, everybody became a patriot. And that happens in every terrorist event. After terrorism happened in France, everyone put France flags on their Facebook profiles. Everyone all of a sudden became patriotic with France. And, it's great, it's nice. But it's fake. It's not real. Because it's a trend. It goes away after a while. So, our mitzvot cannot be a trend. Our mitzvot need to be real. You need to know why you're doing them. The instructions of why you're doing them is in the Torah. Once you have the Torah, you have the second part. Torah is every day, 15, 20 minutes a day, an hour a day, 2 hours a day, as much as you possibly can. Whether it's through CDs, through books, through YouTube, everything that's Torah is considered Torah. Whether it's lectures, some level of Torah. It doesn't need to be a book. If you're not a big reader, okay, watch YouTube. If you don't like YouTube, come to lectures. But don't go to lectures where the guy is, telling you you're a tzaddik and you don't even keep anything. Go to lectures where somebody's giving it to you on your head a little bit and reminds you what's the purpose of life. after you have this Torah, then you have a shot of starting to build your emuna. By recognizing already that you're doing Torah and mitzvot, you're recognizing the Creator's creation, you're recognizing that part of the Torah teaching is musar, which teaches you how to be scared of Hashem. It teaches you after how to be scared with Him. Then you're believing in Him. You're doing what He wants. That's when you have emuna. It's the third piece. After you have the third piece, your tefillah, which is the last one, will do the rest. Because at that point, after you have those three, the tefillah will come naturally. Why? Because every word out of your mouth will be a prayer. Every word out of your mouth will recognize Hashem. Every 2 seconds you're saying Baruch Hashem. Somebody says, how are you? How are you? You could say good. You could say Baruch Hashem. Somebody says, what do you think is going to happen? Bezat Hashem. Or you could say, I don't know. Both are right. I don't know is right. Bezat Hashem is even better though. Because it's in His hands. Once you have those three pieces, the fourth one will finalize the job. And that's exactly what happened at the end of this parasha. In order for us to win the war, we had to do mitzvot. We had to learn some Torah. But since we had a problem with emunah, Hashem had to send Amalek to wake us up. When we're lacking in any one of these three, we're lacking in mitzvot, we're lacking Torah, we're lacking emunah, Hashem sends us problems. If you have problems, that's because you're missing one of them. Or perhaps your tefillah is not good. If you have problems, Hashem is talking to you. Something's wrong here. Maybe all of them, maybe one of them, maybe half. We don't know. It's only you know. You and Hashem know. You know how much effort you're putting into your Torah. You know how much effort you're putting into the mitzvot. You know how much effort you're putting into everything. Are you putting as much effort into Hashem's work as you are into the work that you want to do? You know. You have to be the biggest judge of your own behavior. When you're doing all of these three, the first three, your tefillah will take care of itself. Your tefillah will be natural. Your tefillah will be every word that comes out of your mouth. And that will get you to a point where doing the gemilut chasadim that we talked about in the beginning, of kiruv, it won't even require effort. Why? Because just talking to you will make people religious. When you have the mitzvot as part of your life, that means that people see you, they know you're Jewish. You act Jewish, you look Jewish, you're modest, you cover your hair, you wear a kippah, you go to the Knesset. People know you're Jewish. Your mitzvot show that you're Jewish. When they talk to you, they see what you're talking about. If you're talking about baseball, basketball, football, stock market, okay, great, you're like everybody else. You talk about Moshe Rabbeinu, the manna, the Exodus, the Avraham Avinu, David HaMelech, Mashiach. You're talking about things like that. Think about the foundation of Judaism. Okay, he knows Torah. Parashat Shavua, he knows Torah. Not like he learned in yeshiva 25 years ago. He's telling me about this week's parasha. He's up to date. When they ask you, what do you think is going to happen in the world? And you show no worry whatsoever. What do you think is going to happen with our company? And you show no worry whatsoever. What do you think is going to happen with this, that, and the other thing? And you have no worry. Not just show no worry, but you have no worry. Then you're showing the emuna. These things are the foundation of what your purpose in life is. And when you have all of these, it's very, very easy to do kiruv, because people are going to want to be just like you. He has no worries. He knows what he's talking about. doesn't look so bad that he keep one day a week he doesn't work, or he goes to the Knesset, meets a bunch of Jewish people a couple times a day. It's not a big deal. It's not so bad. And for some reason or another, when he prays, Hashem answers. This 1, 2, 3 things happened, and to the surprise of everyone, Hashem answered his prayers and it didn't happen. You start seeing miracles with your own life. And the chesed that you're doing for Hashem gets results. Why? Because you get other people to become religious through your actions. You're not only selling them to come to a Shiur Torah because it's good for them. You're going there because you're joining them. You're with them. You're telling them to become religious because it's fun. Because it's good. Not just because you want to push somebody into some cult and get them to donate some money for you or something like that. When you do all of these things, doing kiruv becomes easy, becomes natural. And at that point, your tefillah can override the decrees that Hashem has decided. There's nothing better than that. Any questions?
Very clear.
This is-
Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.
Amen.
Amen.